Hello guys, welcome back to my channel and enjoy this fanfic part 1. Now let's start the fanfic. As he grew he was feared and hated, but he was too stubborn to ever give up, to ever give in. The day he learned the truth of him being the Jinchuriki of Kyuubi, he became a ninja. His life after that was starting to get better. He had people he could call friends now, even someone he could call a brother. Naruto Pav. Then he came, the snake Tem, he took the one I could finally call brother. The snake invaded my home, and he is the reason every last one of my precious people are dead, and my home destroyed. I am Naruto Uzumaki Namikaze. In the final battle for Konoha, all of the Rookie 9 and Guy's team lined up to fight, except for Sasuke. He was gone. The rest of the Rookie 9 and Guy's team were some of few left. By this point Konoha's forces had been cut by half at least, from the war against Sound and Iwa. The only reason they made it to the last battle was because they had become very strong over the years, and very lucky. The final battle had been so much worse than anything before. I watched as my friends died before my eyes, protecting me, so that I wouldn't be taken and have the Kyuubi extracted by Madara Uchiha and the rest of the Akatsuki. I know that protecting me was for a bigger cause, but it was still my precious people were dying for, the ones I'm supposed to be protecting. They wanted to hide me away from the battle or send me away so I wouldn't be caught. I refused. I wanted to be there to help. I couldn't run away or hide. That would be like giving up and abandoning my friends. But it didn't matter anyway, they still all died. The only upside was that I finally got to take out that damn snake that took Sasuke's face. Plus a few Akatsuki. You see, the snake and the Akatsuki didn't join forces or anything. The Akatsuki just knew that Sound and Iwa's final battle with Konoha would be a great distraction to come take me. At least I won't have to live without my precious people for long, since my heart was destroyed, really actually destroyed, a Chidori right through. Not even the Kyuubi can replace a whole heart. Kind of ironic, my precious people die and my heart is destroyed. Naruto, we're dying. I know, does it matter? Everyone else is already gone. I may know a way to fix this. What do you mean, fix? We could go back to before any of this ever happened, we could change it. What do we have to do? I'll need you to make my sign on your arm in your blood, then come back here quickly, we don't have much time. Visual art and design. Naruto pushed himself out of his mindscape and marked himself with the sign of the Kyuubi no Kitsune in his own blood, which wasn't hard to find. The sign was ironically the kanji for 9. It was hard on the outside. His heart was gone after all. He couldn't breathe and his blood wasn't pumping to where it needed to, but he knew Sasuke's body was right beside him. Naruto had been getting better with his calligraphy though since he started sealing. So he made the symbol on the inside of his forearm as quickly as possible and pushed himself back to the mindscape where the Kyuubi was waiting. Hurry Nato, I need you to come into the seal. Now if Kyuubi had asked him that about 5 years ago he would have said, no way in hell, but it wasn't 5 years ago, he was 18 now. Through the battles the Kyuubi and him had changed, they'd become closer. The Kyuubi could feel every emotion Naruto could. At first he was angry, bitter that a ninja human had defeated him, the most powerful of all the Biju, and didn't care that the ninja's son suffered. Time had changed that. Little by little, Naruto wasn't just the son of his father now, he was that boy who would always get back up after being beaten down no matter what hit him. So without a word Naruto stepped in the cage of the 4th seal with the most powerful Biju. Naruto looked barely bigger than an ant next to the fox, but he wasn't afraid. The Kyuubi was not him, but he was part of Naruto, sealed to not just his body but his very soul till he no longer exists. The Kyuubi wrapped his tails around Naruto and himself, thinking of when he was taking them. Hey, the brat didn't say when he would like to go, so I guess it's my choice. I think I'll give him a surprise. So Kyuubi's chakra grew around them impossibly fast and powerful. There was so much of the thick red chakra it almost looked black. Then it was like something broke and the chakra with Kyuubi and Naruto inside seemed to explode. Then everything went black. This is my father. He is only trying to protect the village, and thinks he is making me a hero. It's not his fault the villagers are stupid. So if I don't hate the villagers for what they did, how can I blame him? Naruto thought. Minato looked down at his son and smiled at him full of pride. Naruto-san, look at you, you're only a few hours old and already so strong. You know most babies would be crying that it's cold and keeping their eyes shut because they're not used to the light. But you not only have your eyes open and are not crying but see fit to smile at me. Minato looked up seeing Kyuubi's massive form only a couple miles away now. I really wish I could be there to see you grow, you'll be a strong child. Naruto gave a sad smile at that, a strange look on a newborn. He wanted to help his father, he wanted to save him. They arrived at the ceiling altar. Minato held Naruto a bit tighter for a second and put him down, to start drawing the seal. As soon as he undid the blanket around Naruto's stomach, though, his eyes got wide and his heart felt like it stopped for a second. On his son's stomach was the same seal he was about to put on, already there. Naruto just grinned at him the whole time, with that I know something look. After about 30 seconds the Kyuubi's roar pulled Minato out of his daze. He didn't have time to think about this. The seal was already there, so all that's left is summon Gamabunta to get the fox's attention, and activate it. Naruto watched his father walk off to summon Gamabunta, and watched him jump up on the giant toad he knew so well. Preparing to sacrifice himself to activate the seal, but the seal's already active. It's holding my future's Kyuubi, I can feel him there. At that moment Naruto had one of those ideas that got him the title of the most unpredictable ninja, and as usual he acted on it. Oi, Kyuubi, can you hear me? Naruto heard a grumble in the back of his head, as he tried to hurry before his father was gone forever. What is it, kid? I'm trying to sleep, time travel isn't easy, you know. Sorry Q, but I need to know quickly if I can pull the Kyuubi from this time in this seal, before my dad dies trying to activate it. Our souls are bonded for all eternity and he is part of you, so there must be a way. You have a good point, kid. Normally I would assume, since I don't time travel often, that I would automatically fuse with the other me. Like you have with you other self, but since our souls had to stay together, something unusual happened. Try flaring our chakras together as much as you can through the seal, it should call the other soul to us. Educational resources. There was still time, only a few seconds had passed, but his father was starting to form hand seals. So he had to hurry. Baby Naruto pushed as much chakra as he could through the seal, mixing what little of Kyuubi's he had left after the time traveling and final battle. This was still a good amount but was not much to him, only about one tael worth was left. Naruto though also had some of his old chakra, his spirit energy side came with him, so he had enough. As the chakra flared, Minato was shocked. His father's hand seal stopped for a moment, just long enough for the chakra to reach the other Kyuubi. The other Kyuubi stopped within an instant, his soul being pulled out. Minato could see it going into his son. It burned. Naruto could barely keep himself from screaming. But doing so may cause his father to act. He couldn't let that happen this time, it would be better. Then it was over. The other Kyuubi's body dropped dead, its soul gone, absorbed by his Kyuubi, and its body burned to the sky till there was nothing left. Minato was to say the least shocked, his thoughts around the lines, what the hell just happened? But he soon came out of it still completely confused, but remember his son was still alone on the ground. Naruto was so tried, it was a lot for the newborn to stay awake so long and save his father, defeat a Biju, and change the future all on his first day on Earth. The last thing Naruto saw before he closed his eyes was his father coming towards him. Just before he was completely out, he felt his father scoop him up carefully and hold him close. As Minato held his son close, he could feel his sensei Jiraiya coming. Jiraiya stopped right in front of him, out of breath, worry still clear on his face. Minato, what happened to the Kyuubi? Are you okay? Jiraiya asked. I'm fine, sensei, giving a slight smirk, but as for what happened, I'm not really sure. Minato replied truthfully. I think the sealing was successful, but I'm not sure. Minato added. Jiraiya paled and looked at Naruto. What do you mean? Not sure? What exactly happened? He asked. With anyone else, Minato would not have told him since it was concerning his son, but Jiraiya was his sensei and Minato trusted him completely, except to not peek at his wife, but that was something else entirely. So he told Jiraiya everything that happened, and asked him to tell everyone the Kyuubi was gone but not say how, that he would deal with tomorrow. So he took Naruto home with him and fell asleep next to him on the bed. Minato cradled his son in his arms. He had never been so happy and sad at the same time. Happy because this was his son, he was a father. The sadness, though, was because his wife had died during the birth. His beautiful Kushina, gone. There were complications, they said, during labor or something like that. Minato's eyes had glazed over after one of the doctors came out and said, I'm sorry, Hokage-sama, she's passed on. Something about losing too much blood. Due to the Kyuubi's attack, they had used up too much of her type of blood. They didn't have enough blood or time for a transfusion. Kushina had bled out too fast. Minato just stood there for a few minutes, feeling as though someone was twisting a Rasengan in his stomach. The only thing keeping him from falling to his knees was the child in his arms, his child. The Yondaime could feel the Kyuubi coming. He didn't have time to mourn now. He had to make the seal, then maybe he wouldn't have to. He would be with her in the afterlife. The village would be safe and Naruto would be treasured, but I still feel like I should be with him, but there's no other way to stop the Kyuubi. End flashback. I guess there was another way to stop him, but I still don't know what it was. Minato looked back down to see Naruto gazing up at him with curious, wide eyes. Minato's eyes softened and gave Naruto a small smile, while sliding his hand on his son's whisker-marked cheek up to his golden hair that was so much like his own. Naruto Pav. I woke up to see that it wasn't just some crazy dream. I really was in the past. I did save my dad, and yes, I really was born yesterday. He could hear Kyuubi chuckling in the background at that. Then I noticed that my dad had focused his attention on me. Before, he looked kinda dazed out and a little sad. As soon as he looked at me, though, his face turned so peaceful. Nobody ever looked at me like that, not even Ero Sanin or Ba-chan. Then he touched my whisker marks. Nobody has ever done that either. Mainly because I don't like them touched or because they were afraid. I was so shocked, though, I couldn't protest. I could hear my father sigh and mutter, what the hell am I going to tell them? To himself. Then Minato rolled onto his back, his arm now around Naruto, and began to think out loud. I can't tell them the truth. I don't even know what it is. Minato sighed again, completely annoyed that he couldn't figure it out. Then said, plus it makes your sealing look suspicious, and the last thing we need is them thinking you're not the one in control. I should check the seal just in case, though, to reassure the council. So he did. I could feel my dad running a chakra seal scan on me. I didn't have to do anything, just tried to stay still. In a few minutes it was over and my dad smiled at me and said it was perfect, just as he had planned. Naruto gave him his foxy grin. Then Minato had a thoughtful look and began, I'll tell the council that I found a different seal just in time that I was able to tweak into working. They won't know one from the other. Only one that could is Sandame, but he is truthworthy, so if he asks I'll just tell him the truth, more or less. Plus I think he was already putting a law in place so no one can talk about the Kyuubi being in you, so no enemies come for his power. The story worked well. By the end of the week Minato announced Naruto to the village as his son and heir to the Namikaze clan. The village still knew he held the Kyuubi, but less were hostile about it since they now knew whose son he was. Plus everyone soon found out no one messes with Minato, Namikaze's son, and got away in one piece. Not because he demonstrated, no he didn't have to, everyone could see the way he was very protective of his son, and if they were so stupid not to notice, Minato sent a warning when he announced Naruto to the village. Despite his Jinchuriki status, the birth of the Hokage's son gave the villagers a sense of hope as they rebuilt what had been broken in the Kyuubi's attack, and buried those that gave their lives to protect. Soon none of the villagers seemed to mind Naruto around, he was the splitting image of their hero after all. It didn't hurt that anyone that had been around Naruto for more than 5 minutes has nothing bad to say about him either, he didn't seem to ever even cry. When he needed something, a few people said they had heard him trying to get his father's attention by speaking, not words but things like, quadruple A, ah. Of course he was still only a few months old by that time. Anime and manga. Naruto has narrowed down to pervert, no, ramen, and the ever-popular two-san daddy. But the not having any teeth thing had another problem. Naruto's diet was basically milk, juice, milk, water, milk, and he was finally moving on to baby food. Yay. You're right. A almost constant diet of milk was bad enough, there is no way I'm eating that. So that's how Naruto chose what his first word would be, well, sort of. He was going to execute plan, make dad's eyes bug out, tomorrow. It will be a great scene. Naruto thought as he finished practicing his chakra control on the bars of his crib. He could hear Kyuubi snickering as he drifted off to sleep, and knew the kitsune would be waiting to see tomorrow's fun. The next day, Minato got up at the usual time, changed his clothes and went to check on Naruto. Naruto was already awake as usual. With wide innocent eyes, Minato scooped him up and laid him on the changing table. Which Minato knew he hated having his dipper changed, because his son's face would contort into a pout. Naruto did hate it. The only silver lining was that at least his dad didn't know he had the mind of a 18-year-old shinobi. The dipper was changed in seconds, after all he wasn't known as the Yellow Flash for nothing. So he scooped Naruto back up and took him downstairs to get them both breakfast before going to work. Naruto after the dreaded dripper change, Dad took me downstairs to get breakfast. The fun was about to begin, mahahahahaha. I mean, baby's first words, yeah, that's it. Minato got out the new jar of baby food for Naruto's breakfast, even though last time it ended up all over him, and placed Naruto in the highchair. Minato thought he was ready for anything this time, he was wrong, he would dodge like it was raining kunai if he had to. I could see my dad coming towards me with the yucky jar of goo. Just a little longer. I can feel Q is watching on the edge on his seat, when he lifts the spoon up, now. Daddy ramen. Oh wow, I think I broke him. Ha 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 ha. And that is how Naruto Uzumaki Namikaze's first word turned into his first sentence. Minato I went to feed Naruto and was just about to give him the first bite, happy he didn't hid it away yet. When Naruto said something, he called me daddy. Yes, and I think he said he wants ramen. Whatever, I'd give him his own pony for this. Naruto's giggling unfroze me. As soon as Minato unfroze, he scooped Naruto up out of the highchair and hugged him, then started dancing around, singing, yes. The Anbu guards watching thought their Hokage might just have finally lost it when he flashed to the window where they were with the most serious face they had ever seen and said, "If you ever speak a word of this, I'll send you to the IT. Interrogation and Torture Department." They just nodded, too terrified and shocked to speak yet. As soon as they did, Minato's serious face disappeared and he smiled brightly, flashing back up with Naruto to his son's room. "Gotta get him ready to go out, we'll go to Ichiraku's for breakfast." Wait a minute, Naruto is only 3 months old. Is he supposed to be able to communicate so well? And how does he know that ramen is good? He might have seen me eating it, but I don't think I ever said it was ramen. Minato looked down at Naruto, who was sitting waiting patiently to be dressed. Wait patiently? I may not know much about babies, but they're not supposed to be patient, right? Now that I think about it, he has slept through every night since he was born too, and I know I was told he wouldn't do that. I don't think I've ever seen him cry either. Minato looked back down at Naruto, who was smiling, amusement clear in his eyes. Minato's eyebrows furrowed. It's like he thinks it's funny that I'm just standing here staring at him. Hey, it probably is, still. Minato bent down and looked at Naruto on the same level, Naruto's smirk never leaving. "Why don't you ever cry, Naruto?" Minato asked his son, poking him lightly on the forehead, not really expecting an answer. Naruto Pav. Naruto and Kyuubi were cracking up inside. Ha 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 ha. Oh, this is getting good, hee hee. Naruto thought. Look at his face. Kyuubi snickered. Why don't you ever cry, Naruto? My father asked as he poked me lightly on the forehead. Naruto wasn't quite sure what to say to that. He could either start crying, which there was no way he was doing that. He'd cried enough in the last life, say something like, "Why do you want me to?" Which he thought there had been enough talking for one day, so he settled on the third option. Minato Pav. As I asked Naruto the question, I didn't really expect an answer, but I found myself waiting for one anyway. Within a few seconds, Naruto tilted his head to the right with the biggest blue eyes, and then I heard him say, "Ooh," almost like a question in his high baby voice. I laughed. The look on his face and that sound was too much. Then he laughed back as I finished dressing him in his orange shirt with a blue spiral, black pants and jacket with a matching orange strip down the left side. "Ready to go get some ramen, Naruto?" It wasn't really a question, but Naruto answered anyway by screaming happily and bouncing, as I picked him up, grabbed my jacket, the white one with red flames at the bottom, and headed out the door. Naruto and Minato were at Ichiraku's in a flash, literally a yellow flash. Naruto loved the Hiraishin no Jutsu, but he was beginning to think his dad was getting lazy. I mean, really, we don't live that far from Ichiraku's. Rooftops would have been fine. Not that I wouldn't do the same thing, it is ramen we're talking about. Naruto thought, but all thoughts disappeared as soon as he smelled the greatest food of all time, and really, who else could say that and mean it like him? "Oi, Tyuki, could we get some ramen over here?" Minato called as he stepped in. "Ohio Hokage-sama, I see you've brought Naruto. How are you two today?" Tyuki replied. "Great." Naruto just said his first words, "So we're here," kind of at his request. Minato put on a sheepish grin and ruffled the hair on the back of his head with his hand, while still holding Naruto with the other. Tyuki raised an eyebrow at that. Had to be sure, at Naruto's request. What exactly were his first words? At this, Naruto decided today's fun wasn't over, and turned to look at Tyuki before Minato could answer and said, "Waman." Tyuki stilled at this, as did Minato. Then Minato beamed at Naruto and Tyuki looked like he was about to cry tears of joy. "Oh, what a great day it is, Naruto Namikaze. In honor of your great achievement, your bowl is on the house." Naruto beamed at Tyuki and laughed. Minato had finished cutting Naruto's noodles into the smallest pieces possible as Naruto chanted the whole time, "Daddy daddy, waman waman." Tyuki watched and smiled full of pride. Then Minato gave Naruto his first bit of ramen. This time Naruto could have cried tears of joy. Naruto started to point for more, when Jiraiya and Kakashi walked in, and spotted them. Being ever so tactful, Jiraiya just laughed, as Kakashi beside him chuckled. At seeing Minato about to spoon-feed his 3-month-old son ramen. After a few seconds, Minato and Naruto were glaring at them. Minato was glaring because they were laughing at him, and Naruto was glaring because he wasn't being given any more ramen until they didn't shut up. Kakashi noticed his sensei's glare, shut up and turned his head away, but looked like he was still grinning even though he was wearing a mask. Then Jiraiya finally noticed Minato glaring at him, but he also noticed Naruto glaring and raised an eyebrow at that. Naruto had always clung to him since the moment he saw Jiraiya. Flashback. Naruto was just a few days old, and Jiraiya had come to see how his favorite student Minato was doing after everything that had happened. Minato was holding a sleeping Naruto when he got there. They started to talk about everything from Kushina's death to Naruto's odd ceiling. Naruto could hear them as he started to wake up. He knew both voices. One was his father and the other, Jiraiya-sensei, Ero-Sennin. He died so long ago. Naruto couldn't take it anymore and opened his eyes only to reach for Jiraiya as soon as he laid his eyes on him and squirm as much as a baby a few days old could. Minato and Jiraiya noticed instantly and were confused why Naruto would want to get to Jiraiya so much. Minato let Jiraiya pick Naruto up and he almost instantly attached himself to Jiraiya's red vest like a lifeline, slightly shaking. Both Minato and Jiraiya wore looks of confusion and worry, but after a while Naruto calmed down and relaxed in his sensei's arms, but still held on to his red vest. Since then Jiraiya fell in love with the little bundle of sunshine and would bring him stuffed animals almost every time he came by. Most of them were frogs or foxes and Naruto loved them all. Naruto seemed to just beam whenever he came over, even without the presents. Anime and manga. End flashback. But now he was glaring at him. Both Jiraiya's questions about why Minato was feeding Naruto ramen, and why Naruto was glaring at him were soon answered. With one simple sentence, but not by Minato. Naruto was getting tired of his ramen being so close enough to have the smell consume him with his heightened senses, yet he was unable to eat it. He looked at his father, then at his ramen, and then to Jiraiya, who seemed to be just staring at him with a curious look now, and looked back to his ramen. He was now annoyed. Even at 18 he didn't have too many patience, but he did know how to get what he wanted, and foxes are still tricksters. So he looked back up at his father, who was now staring at him too because he noticed Jiraiya looking, and made the biggest blue puppy dog eyes he could with a small pout, then said in a small voice, "Daddy," looks over at the ramen, then looks back at Minato, "Wamen." Minato almost died right there of innocent cuteness overload, and hurried to give Naruto another bite. Jiraiya burst out laughing again, now understanding exactly why Naruto had glared at him. He was just like his father, a real ramen lover. This time even Kakashi laughed. Naruto was pleased how easy it was to get his dad to feed him more. Even when Jiraiya and Kakashi started laughing, Minato kept feeding him this time. Minato had enough though. What is so funny, huh? Kakashi just quieted down to chuckles. While Jiraiya spoke up, still smiling broadly, "The kid is only 3 months old and he already can con you into getting him ramen." Minato looked down at his son, who was still focused on the ramen, which Minato was still feeding him as they talked. Then he looked back up at Jiraiya with a raised eyebrow. "He didn't con me into anything." Jiraiya just smirked, which irked Minato to no end, and asked, "Then whose idea was it to get ramen?" Minato really didn't want to answer but couldn't really lie to his sensei. It was Naruto's. Minato sighed and hung his head, somehow still feeding Naruto. Then snapped his head back up, but it was his first words, "I wasn't." Conned. Eye roll, he's 3 months old. Jiraiya stopped trying to annoy his student at that seeing a new subject. His first word was ramen. Asked Kakashi before Jiraiya could. Minato shook his head smiling proudly. No, his first word was daddy, his second word was ramen. After that they all looked at each other and laughed, this time with Minato. Naruto was still too busy eating ramen. Minato never noticed when he started feeding Naruto his ramen too. Naruto is 21 months now, or 1 year and 9 months, however you want to say it. His chakra control is getting much better now since he has been training since the day he was born. Naruto thought his chakra control was bad the first time around, but more chakra equals less control, right? Well, now that Kyuubi's power has doubled and Naruto's spiritual chakra came with him, because chakra is made of spiritual and physical energy. Well, let's just say it's a good thing Naruto has been training himself in control so early. If that seal wasn't made by the death god and the Yondaime, it would have broken from so much power. I can make about 50 kage bushins now. I guess that's good for not being even 2 years old yet, but the hardest part is finding a moment and a place to train. I can walk up and down the walls in my room if I'm careful, and on the water in the bathtub. Well, not so much with water walking. My dad will hardly leaves me alone for a minute there. Thinks I'm going to drown. Rolls eyes asterisk. So basically the only place I can train is in my room, but even then I got to make sure no Anbu are watching, as Shika would say this is so troublesome. However, I have managed not to get caught, and have gotten in a bit of training despite everything. Now though I've come up with a way to get away for a little bit and train. I wasn't sure it was going to work the first time, but it did, so I've been doing it for the last week. Alright, this is what I did. Since dad takes me to work with him every day, before he came to get me in the morning, I made a kage bushin and switched him with me while I hid under the bed and tried to hide my chakra. I waited until he left with my clone, then I left the house from the back window of my room first, making sure no Anbu were there. And when I was far enough away, I hanged into someone else till I got to the training fields. I used training field 7, of course, at least I know no one will be using it for about 10 years. It seemed to be going well, that is, until some Iowa spies spotted a mini yellow flash who was barely as tall as their knees, water walking on a river, with about 20 clones of himself. Yeah, I think that's when it went downhill. 00000000000. I can feel the enemy's eyes on me. I know their Iowa, they smell like dirt. Naruto turned around slowly on top of the water, trying to look like he hadn't realized they were watching. He kept his head down like his was still looking at his feet and let his eyes roll up to see them. They wouldn't be able to see his eyes from how far they were, but with how Kyuubi had enhanced all his senses he could see them perfectly. There were 3 of them, 2 male 1 female, all about Chunin level. Naruto knew he would be hard-pressed to take one down by himself. If he used Kyuubi's power he could stop them, but if even one got away and reported back to Iowa, that would be something that could change the future more than it already is and get him a lot of assassination attempts, so that's a last resort. So first Naruto dispelled the clones they couldn't see in the forest that were walking up and down trees to conserve his strength. Now he could dispel the clone with his dad and activate the seal on his clothes for his dad's Hiraishin no Jutsu so that he would come, or try to escape. Naruto's options were getting lower though now that one of the enemy ninja was coming up to him. It was the female. She had a slight smile and was trying to act nice, while Naruto tried to act innocent. Hello, what's your name? Are you all alone out here? The female ninja asked about 5 feet away from him, as her 2 male counterparts kept at about 20 feet. Naruto decided to play along for now. I'm Naruto, and yeah, I'm training. What's your name? He said, careful to leave his last name out, which she of course noticed. The ninja wasn't sure she should give him her name, but he was very young, there not much he could really do with just the first name anyway, so she answered him. I'm Hotaru. You must be strong. You look very young to be training so hard. How old are you? She asked. Naruto knew he shouldn't answer that, but he was backed into a corner, and now there was no way to escape without help. So he dispelled the clone with his dad along with all the others on the river, and replied, I'm almost 2. Hotaru was shocked. She knew the kid was young and very strong for his age, but she thought 3, maybe 4 years old and just small for his age, that would be considered a powerful prodigy. But this kid wasn't even 2 years old. She just stared until the kid, no toddler, put his right hand on his jacket and pushed chakra there. Hinduism. While the enemy ninja was still shocked, Naruto activated his father's seal. Hotaru was too stunned to realize it was a seal and stop him. Before a second passed, there was a yellow flash and the yandere was there next to him. That snapped her out of it, though Hotaru jumped back to her comrades on pure reflex. Minato Pav. Minato was watching his son play in his office. I mean, working hard on doing all the paperwork that was staked on his desk. When he heard a poof and Naruto's toy dropped, Minato knew what a poof like that meant. It was a Kage Bushin, but Naruto is not even 2 years old, and that's an A- ranked forbidden jutsu. Maybe it was someone's Hang Bushin. When Minato got to Naruto, he was so relieved that his son looked to be in one piece. Though he barely had time to notice, he also looked a bit worn out, a bit sweaty and dirty, like he had been playing outside for a while, or training. Minato's attention though was pulled away as he sensed the woman that had been in front of his son jump back when she noticed his presence. This meant 1, she was a ninja, and 2, she wasn't a Konoha ninja. His own ninja were pretty used to him appearing out of nowhere, and none had ever jumped back like that but enemy nin. The Iowa spies were beyond scared now. They were average level chunin in enemy territory, which was life endangering enough. But now stood in front of them Konoha's legendary yellow flash, the Yondaime Hokage. Minato Namikaze held the records for being the youngest shinobi with a flee on sight order, and for most with a single jutsu. And they had just been caught near his very young son. Yes, things just got really bad for the Iowa shinobi. Minato wanted nothing more but to scoop Naruto up and hold on to him, but knew if it came to a fight he would need his hands. So he tried to pull Naruto behind him as much as possible without taking his eyes off the enemy. Surprising, Naruto seemed to know where to go so that he could be protected more easily. Minato had enough of the staring contest though. Who are you 3, and what are you doing in Konoha? Minato called over. The 3 Iowa ninjas decided it was definitely time to run, so without a word they started running in 3 separate directions. Minato hesitated to flash away from his son, but knew he'd be back before anyone could get near him. So Minato flashed to the side of all 3, and in seconds they had all been knocked out from chops to the neck, and Minato had flashed back to Naruto. Looking over Naruto carefully and finding nothing but scratches that seemed to be a few days old because they were mostly healed. Minato hurried back to the Hokage office with Naruto and told the Anbu to retrieve the spies and take them to Ibiki in IT. Naruto and Minato were finally alone. Minato sat down behind his desk with Naruto on his lap, and finally breathed a sigh of relief that nothing bad had happened to his son. But now he had time to think, how had this happened at all? Naruto was only 21 months old, but he still talked pretty well. Maybe he could get something out of him. Naruto Pav. Naruto knew it was coming as soon as he summoned his dad to him. He knew he'd have to come up with something to tell his dad, but he couldn't lie. No, he could lie for a joke or a prank and even a mission if he had to, but he could not lie to his father. He would have to find a way to skip around the truth without lying to his father, and if all else fails he would have to tell the truth, or at least part of it. My dad turned me to the side of his lap so he could look at me. Here it comes. Naruto, do you know what happened? Okay, I can at least stall for a more direct question. Oh, what happened? Naruto answered the question with a question, classic evasion. So Minato specified, how did you get out to that field? Okay, that was a direct question. Well, I think this is going to back me into a corner, but I'll go with the simple answer. I walked. You shouldn't have done that, kid. Minato now had a lot of questions, but he had to make them simple for Naruto. At least he thought he did. Anime and manga. What do you mean you walked? You were with me, remember? You came with daddy to the office. No Q. I think now I can just really confuse him. I wouldn't try that, kid. If you won't lie to him, he might figure out what you're saying. He probably already has a few ideas. If you give him too many pieces, he might see the picture. I know, but I'm out of ideas and he's waiting. Yes, daddy, I did that too. Now Minato wasn't sure if his son could answer this, but if he meant what Minato thought he meant, then he definitely should be able to answer. How did you do that and walk there at the same time, Naruto? Okay, I was really hoping he wouldn't ask that. Minato noticed Naruto looking down like he was afraid to tell him, and instantly went into overprotective parent mode. Naruto, it's okay. You can tell me, I won't get mad. Minato said in a soft voice and put his hand on Naruto's head. Naruto pulled his head up still under his father's hand, looked at his face so full of concern. Sometimes he forgets just how much his father worries for him. Because no one in his first life had ever taken care of him, as far back as he could remember, he had taken care of himself. Sure, old man Hokage had visited and made sure he had money for food. While Jiraiya had been a great friend, sensei, mentor, and had even died trying to stop the Akatsuki who were trying to him. But no one had actually taken care of him. No one had hugged him when he had nightmares until he was calm, or worried about him getting sick, not that he could or had been so happy just because he was near. Until his second life, until his dad had a chance. With those words, the concern on his father's face and the feel of his hand still on his head, Naruto had to give him something. He wanted to spill everything right there, but Kyuubi's disapproving thoughts stopped him. It would make it hard to know what the future is, and change it to what we want. His friends, he had to save them, he couldn't risk them, but maybe I can still give him a bit of truth. I used the Kage Bushin, daddy. Naruto replied to his father, hoping he hadn't just made a big mistake. Minato stilled. He thought it made sense, but how in the hell does a toddler learn, let alone use, an A-ranked Forbin Den ninjutsu? On the outside his face hadn't changed, though he wouldn't scare his son. So Minato took a deep breath and asked the next logical question, Naruto, how did you learn the Kage Bushin, and why did you trick me into thinking you were here? This time Naruto was quick to answer, I learned it from the scroll of ceiling. Naruto pointed across the room to where it was. Okay, technically not a lie, I did learn it from there. While Minato wondered, how did I not notice him playing with it? Then Naruto finished, and I let you think I was with you so you wouldn't worry while I was gone. Why were you gone, Naruto? Why did you go to that field alone? Minato asked. To train. Naruto gave the simple answer. To train how? And I didn't know you could read so well. Did someone help you read that scroll? Minato pressed. I was doing chakra exercises and no one helped me read it. I just skipped over the big words. Naruto replied, fidgeting a bit. Still true, I did do that when I first read it. Minato sighed. Naruto, you know you're not supposed to go through daddy's things. I don't know how you managed to learn it, but that jutsu is dangerous. You might have noticed that when you let your clones pop you feel tired. Naruto, if you make too many and make them do too much, then you may get so tired that you fall asleep, and not ever wake up, son, it could you. Naruto looked down. He knew that wouldn't happen to him, Kyuubi would never let them die in such a stupid way, but he felt bad for making his dad worried. Naruto looked back up and tried to make his dad feel better by saying, "But daddy, I can make so many." Minato looked at his son a bit skeptical at what he thought was so many, but was curious all the same. So he smirked at Naruto. "Okay Naruto, how about we go out to the training grounds together tomorrow and you can show me how many, and you can show me your chakra exercises too." Naruto gave his dad a big smile and chirped, "Okay, can we get some ramen now daddy? Tomorrow is gonna be a fun day." Minato sat up instantly and caught Naruto in mid-jump, looking at him stunned and still half asleep. Naruto just laughed at him. Minato groaned after realizing nothing was wrong, and slumped back down into his pillow. Naruto just laughed more, and then started whining, "Daddy, come on, you gotta get up," as he pulled on his dad. Minato asked, still sleeping, "Why?" Naruto answered excitedly, "Because you said that I could show you my clones today." Minato sighed knowing he wasn't going to get any more sleep, and sat up. "All right Naruto, I'm up." Naruto cheered, "Yeah," pumping his fist into the air. Even tired Minato had to laugh at his son's enthusiasm. Naruto ran out of the bedroom to get changed as Minato did the same. They had eaten breakfast, a healthy eggs and toast, can't have ramen all the time, and were out the door within the hour. Scene change. Naruto came running into training field 7 with Minato not far behind. "Alright Naruto, let's see what you can do, show me how many shadow clones you can make." Naruto didn't see much sense in hiding what he could do anymore, so he fully intended to make as many shadow clones as he could today. "Okay." Naruto shouted and turned to face his father, putting his hands in a cross shape and called out the name of his favorite jutsu. Kage Bushin no Jutsu. When the smoke cleared, there were just over 50 identical Narutos in front of Minato. Minato Pav. Minato froze. When Naruto said he could do a lot, I thought maybe 10. 10 would be amazing for him, but there's over 50 solid clones here, and he doesn't even look winded. Minato noticed his son looking at him waiting for a reaction, and forced himself to unfreeze. "Wow," was all he could say in a stunned voice. Then Naruto started laughing, meaning all the Narutos were too. Some were rolling on the ground from laughing so hard. Now that pulled Minato completely out of his daze, he smirked at the Narutos. "What's so funny, huh?" Minato asked, lifting an eyebrow. One of the Narutos answered, still laughing, "Your face, haha, you look like you just, haha, ran into a brick wall." After that, the clone fell back laughing so hard it poofed. Minato had to admit that his face probably looked pretty funny, not out loud though. "Alright Naruto, which one is the real you?" One of the identical copies to the right answered him. "Over here dad." Minato flashed to him, and scooped him up. "Naruto, you made a lot, you must have worked really hard on this. You did a great job." Minato praised him, and held him with one arm, while he used the other hand to ruffle Naruto's golden hair. Anime and manga. Naruto beamed, not ever getting much of any praise before. "Really?" Naruto asked, wanting to be sure. "Really? But remember what I said, be careful with this jutsu," Minato told his son, as he looked at him with pride. "Now why don't you show me those chakra exercises you told me about?" Minato said as he put Naruto back on his feet. Naruto dispersed all the clones and walked over to the closes tree as his father watched. Then walked right up the tree without a moment's hesitation. Minato whistled in awe. "Naruto, you know that's really advanced. How long have you been practicing?" Naruto wasn't sure how to reply to that without lying. So he replied with a vague term, "A while. I've been working on tree climbing for the last week." Wow. It would take most genin a week or more to master this. Minato thought. "Naruto, that's amazing. You're a bit young for training." But why don't I teach you a few things anyway, when I'm not working? Naruto's eyes almost looked like they were glowing, then the stunned silence broke with a yell of, "Yaaaaa." Minato wouldn't be surprised if all of Konoha heard him. "Oh daddy, I forgot to show you one more thing I've been practicing," Naruto said as he ran towards the river. "Naruto, stop. You'll fall in." Naruto stopped instantly at his father's voice and concern. Turned to look at Minato with a fox-like grin saying, "It's okay daddy, I can walk on the water." Naruto rolled his eyes as if it was so obvious, and started walking slower towards the river so his dad wouldn't freak out. Minato was by his side within a second anyway. Close enough to grab him if he slipped. As Naruto stepped on top of the moving water with no problem at all. Minato had too many surprises today to be shocked, so he ended up just laughing, telling Naruto he was a little prodigy. At the praise, Naruto jumped up and down on top of the water worrying Minato, and then ran straight for his father in a tackle hug laughing the whole time. Naruto Pav. After they left the training field, Minato was walking with Naruto sitting on top of his shoulder through the main streets of Konoha heading towards Ichiraku's for an early lunch. Naruto seemed to be glowing like a miniature sun, completely thrilled with being carried on his dad's shoulder. I remember seeing so many kids doing this with their dads. It always made me so sad to see them so happy, enjoying the one thing I truly believed I would never have. I was always jealous of them but tried so hard to not let anyone know. Those kids never knew what they had, they would complain about them, saying their parents never let them do anything or grounded them for doing something wrong. Those kids had dads that would play with them, protect them and share popsicles with them on a hot day, and a mom that would worry over them bandaging their scraped knees, kissing them to make it better. Those kids never knew a world where they were alone. Naruto's thoughts were cut off then as he spotted the very one he was thinking about. Sasuke Uchiha was walking alongside his mother holding her hand. Looking completely innocent, nothing like the Sasuke Naruto remembered. Naruto never really knew Sasuke the first time around until they were put on a team together. He had seen Sasuke on the pier that one time, and knew of Sasuke as the Rookie of the Year and because they were in the same class, but never knew much about him till they were stuck together. This time would be different. As Minato was about to walk by them, Naruto reached down towards Sasuke and gave out a small grunt like, indicating to his father that he wanted to say hello to the boy below. Children don't always use their words after all. Minato noticed and let Naruto down. Makoto, Sasuke's mom, saw and stopped, stopping Sasuke too. "Why hello, what's your name?" she asked Naruto, already knowing because he was standing next to the yandere who he was basically a mini clone of. "Anime and manga. I'm Naruto Namikaze. It's nice to meet you," Naruto replied, never taking his eyes of Sasuke. Makoto answered, "Thank you Naruto. Sasuke-chan, why don't you introduce yourself?" Sasuke nodded. "Hi, I'm Sasuke Uchiha, it's nice to meet you too." Minato spoke up at this point. "So Sasuke, how old are you?" Sasuke perked up at that. "I just turned 2 yesterday," he replied with a smile so peaceful Naruto had only seen it once on him. Flashback. Sasuke possessed by Orochimaru and Naruto had been fighting for a long time now. They decided to end it with a final blow, the classic Chidori vs Rasengan. This time instead of smashing them together like at the Valley of the End, the snake pulled off course at the last second and went for Naruto's heart, completely destroying it. Naruto's attack was still in his hand, he had stopped at the last second seeing Sasuke's eyes flash dark. Then he saw the snake's eyes flash to Sasuke's dark ones again. Sasuke was fighting back. Naruto could barely keep his head up when he heard Sasuke say, "I thought of you as a brother too, but I don't have much time." "Sorry Naruto. With that said, Sasuke grabbed Naruto's wrist and slammed the Rasengan into his own heart. Flashback end. Really? Well, Naruto will be turning 2 in 3 months, so you guys are pretty close in age. Maybe you'd like to come over and play sometime. Minato said, looking back up to Makoto, as did Sasuke. She nodded. I'm sure Sasuke-chan would love that, Hokage-sama. There aren't many kids his age in the compound. Naruto was happy this was going perfect. Soon he would have his brother back. Well, then it's settled. Makoto-san, if you and Sasuke are free this weekend, come over to the Hokage Tower and we'll make a day of it. Minato grinned. Of course, Hokage-sama. We will be there around noon. Makoto questioned. That will be perfect. Minato answered. Naruto never took his eyes off Sasuke, smiling at him the whole time, till he disappeared around the corner. As soon as he did, Naruto looked up at Minato, who was holding his hand walking with him, and reached his hands up in the classic, "Pick me up, kid" plea. So Minato grinned and scooped him back up into his arms. Scene change. Later that night, Naruto got up seeing Sasuke had reminded him why he was here. He went over to his desk and started writing. He titled it, Timeline. Under that he put 2 columns, 1, Original, and 1, Current. Under the column marked Original he put, Birth Yondaime died. Next to it under, Current, he put, Saved Dad. Naruto put everything he could think of that was important that happened and when, with as much detail as he remembered up to the moment he came back. Including Hinata's attempted kidnapping at 3 years old by Cloud, which resulted in Hisashi Hyuga's, Negi's father, death. The Uchiha massacre, the sand invasion at the Chunin exams, when Sasuke left, Jiraiya's death, pain coming to Konoha, Akatsuki. Naruto closed up the scroll when he couldn't think of any more, and placed a seal on it so that no one could open it but him. If someone tried, it would self-destruct in flames. His father may be able to open it given time, but that's why he was also hiding it under the floorboards beneath his bed. Now the only thing left is figure out what to change, and what should be left alone. Hinata's 3rd birthday was coming up fast, and all the clan heads and their children were invited. Which meant all the soon-to-be rookie 9 would be at the party except for Sakura, since she wasn't part of a clan, and despite the fact he wasn't really a part of a clan either, as the Hokage's son Naruto was invited too. Hinata had told Naruto once in his last life that the kidnapping was on that night. The Cloud Ninja were already in Konoha. The problem was Naruto still hadn't decided what to do about it. Naruto knew Hinata would be okay, but Negi's dad would die. Which was terrible, but wasn't it part of what made Neji who he was? Wasn't how that affected Negi what started the change in the Hyuga clan? If that never happens, will the Hyuga clan ever become one clan without a branch and main house side? Would they ever get rid of the caged bird seal? It was tomorrow night and Naruto knew what he wanted to do, but what was right? The next day came and Naruto got ready, doing his morning cantus, a series of moves, stances, that his dad taught him in the backyard. They were his dad's personal style, so Naruto actually had to learn them, but that made it all the better. It would have been boring pretending to learn the same stances he already knew. When he was done, Minato had breakfast ready for him. Hey, good morning, Naruto. Are you ready for Hinata's party? Minato greeted him as he sat down to eat. Yeah, Dad. I just need to get a shower first. Naruto said. Great, what did you get her for a present? Minato asked. I got her this really cute fox plushie. Naruto chirped. Minato still then chuckled. Well, I'm sure she'll like it. Naruto smirked. I never get tired of messing with him about Kyuubi. Keep it up and he might realize that you're doing it on purpose, Kit. He probably already suspicious, but he'll never say anything till he is sure. Plus it's fun messing with him, and he is not telling me the truth anyway. You do realize you're not telling him the truth either, right? Hey, okay, but it's still fun. Naruto mentally stuck his tongue out at Kyuubi and focused on the outside world. Naruto got up from the table and ran up the stairs to the shower. "I'll be ready in a little bit, Dad." Hinata's party was at 6 p.m. and they were right on time. As they came to the gate on the Hyuga compound, the guards let them in without a second glance. Another Hyuga showed up as soon as they entered. "Are you here for Miss Hinata-sama's birthday, Hokage-sama?" she asked. "Yes, would you show us the way, miss?" Minato asked. She gave a short bow. "Of course, Hokage-sama. Follow me." Then she turned and walked them inside. Anime and manga. The party was nice. The adults talked while the kids played. The cake was cinnamon flavor with buttercream white icing, which was Hinata's favorite. Afterwards, Hinata opened presents. Shikamaru gave her a game shogi. Of course, Ino's present was hair accessories. Choji's was an indoor butterfly. Shino gave her a book on herbs and bugs, and Kiba's gift was a bundle of wild flowers. Sasuke gave her origami paper and instructions on how to make different origami designs. Hinata liked all her gifts and even hugged the fox plushie Naruto gave her. All of them were just like Naruto remembered them before the war, happy carefree kids. Half the time Shikamaru was sleeping. Shino looked so funny at 3 years old in such a huge coat and sunglasses like a chibi. If Naruto was a girl, he would say it was cute. Ino was fawning over Sasuke, which he was ignoring. Kiba was boasting about one thing or another. Naruto himself just sat around for a while watching everyone with a content look on his face. Naruto sighed. He couldn't sit there forever. The adults would think something was wrong. So he got up and started talking with everyone. He spotted Hinata in the middle. She looked so cute, and in that little kimono she looked perfect. Naruto's heart sped up while he watched her. Flashback. Hinata had said she loved him in the middle of that fight with Pain. Then he thought that pained her. It hurt so much to think that. Naruto just broke instantly under that pain and threw his rage out with the Kyuubi's chakra, getting to 8 tails before his father's failsafe snapped him out of it. That was twice as much of the Kyuubi's power that he had ever used. Thankfully, the blow that hit Hinata hadn't been fatal. A few weeks after, Naruto had asked Hinata to meet him on top of the Hokage mountains so that they could talk. They had talked for a long time that night. He remembered she said those words again that night, "I love you, Naruto-kun." But this time she continued, "I've watched you for a long time since the academe, because you gave me courage. I saw you fall down tired again and again, but you would always get back up and try harder. My father always seemed to think I was weak. I thought it was so amazing that you kept trying and getting stronger, because before I met you I didn't keep trying. I was afraid to fail again and disappoint my father more. I love you because when I think of you I have the courage to get back up and try." Naruto was stunned. She had acknowledged him for so long, and he never even saw it. No, he did see it, he just was too oblivious to know what it was. Every time she fainted when he was close, every time he saw her blush, and when she wouldn't look him in the face. She always looked down when he was near. "Hinata, I don't know what to say, but it makes me happy to know you care. I know I care about you too. I never really thought about it, but I think I like you too." Naruto was looking down with a slight blush on his cheeks. When he was done talking, he looked back up to her. Hinata looked like a deer caught in the headlights, but as soon as Naruto looked at her, she snapped out of it, threw her arms around his neck and kissed him on the lips. Naruto was for his part shocked that the girl who was always so shy around him just jumped him. Not that he minded, he smirked to himself and kissed her back, putting his hands around her waist. After a minute they broke the kiss, needing air. Hinata was practically crimson and tried to pull away, embarrassed by her actions, but Naruto just pulled her back close to him. So she rested her head on his chest, listening to his heart race, while they caught their breath. Hinata had never been so happy. and Naruto finally felt at peace holding her in his arms. Naruto made it to the Hyuga compound within a few minutes, and hid himself outside the compound walls in the branches of a good-sized tree. Then he waited for when the Cloud Ninja would try to run with Hinata. Now he had nothing to do but think, how would changing this affect the future? What would his future's Neji think about letting his father die to keep the future easier to know? Especially when he had saved his own father, which must have changed the future a lot more than this would. Not that Naruto was thinking about that at the time. There was no more time to think now though. The Cloud Ninja was jumping over the wall. Hinata was unconscious under his arm. Naruto didn't think. He saw that ninja putting his Hina-chan in danger and he started to get hot. It felt almost like his blood was starting to boil. Flashback. The final battle would begin soon. Scouts had reported back that the enemy would be at Konoha's gates in only a few hours. Naruto had begged Tsunade to make Hinata go with the other civilians and genin who were being evacuated. Hinata had refused when Naruto asked her, unwilling to leave his side. Naruto, finally desperate enough, told Tsunade why it was so important that Hinata not get caught in the fighting. He knew she was strong, that wasn't it, she was 2 months pregnant. Tsunade finally agreed and ordered Hinata to retreat, telling her teammates and everyone else it was due to a medical condition keeping the child a secret from any enemy's ears. Naruto had made sure to watch her and his unborn son go, so that he knew she had left. But he found out too late it wasn't enough. Most everyone had fallen, only a few of the rookie 9 still stood. Naruto was fighting Orochimaru, when he noticed Hinata fighting Kabuto not far off. Naruto felt instantly terrified, only his quick reflexes saved him from losing his head to the snake. She had come back after he had fought so hard to keep her safe. Now he couldn't get to her, couldn't help her, and if he didn't pay attention to his fight he wouldn't last long. All he could do is hope she would be okay. That hope was short-lived when he heard her scream out in pain. Hinata had taken her eyes off Kabuto for a second when she heard from about a mile away Akamaru yelp in pain as an attack hit him. She realized the mistake as soon as she made it, but it was too late. In that second Kabuto had gotten in close. Hinata turned her head back around just in time to see his chakra scalpel enter her stomach. Instant lying the unborn child and hitting internal organs, causing her to bleed out. Anime and manga. Naruto saw red. He turned his back on the snake, not caring what he would do, and charged with Kyuubi's power quickly growing behind him. Kabuto never stood a chance. He was literally ripped to shreds within a few seconds by Naruto's bare hands. Naruto walked over to Hinata, shedding Kyuubi's power. She only had a few moments left. He knelt down and held her. Naruto, I'm sorry, I just couldn't leave you. I love you. A single tear ran down Hinata's face. Naruto kissed it away and whispered in her ear, don't worry Hina-chan, I love you too always. With that he lightly kissed her lips, just after he felt her heart stop. He could hear Orochimaru laughing at the sight. The snake would pay. End flashback. Naruto leapt in the Cloud Ninja's blind spot, quickly pumping chakra into his small leg and kicking the Cloud Ninja in the back of the neck, knocking him out cold. Before the nin could hit the ground on top of Hinata, Naruto pulled her out from the nin's arm, and held her close to his chest, bridal style. Hinata was starting to wake up, so Naruto walked over to the wall and sat Hinata against it, holding her up with his hands on her shoulders. Hinata opened her eyes to see the most beautiful deep blue eyes staring back at her. Then she remembered him. He was the boy from her party, the Hokage's son, Naruto. Naruto-kun? Hinata asked, sounding confused. Naruto just smiled at her and put his index finger up to his lips and whispered, "Shush, don't tell." Still smiling even with his finger held across his lips. Naruto could feel them coming, her father and a few others, probably Hyuga guards. He had to leave not thinking. He kissed Hinata's forehead and left. Hinata didn't know why he did that, but it felt nice. Like she was safe. She blinked though, and when she opened her eyes he was gone. Within a few seconds Hinata saw her father coming towards her, pausing by the cloud ninja only long enough to be sure he was unconscious. Then he went straight to her and picked her up, carefully checking for injuries. When he found none, he had the guards with him see who the masked ninja was and tie him up. Naruto watched from close by, making sure they knew who he was, so no need the Cloud Nin ambassador, and took high prisoner instead. As soon as they did, Naruto sped towards his home, making sure no one spotted him. Because when the Hyugas noticed who that Nin was, the first thing that they would have to do is alert the Hokage. So Naruto made it back in record time, quickly finding the hole in the Anbu's defense around his room and slipped in unnoticed, climbing back into his bed. At that moment he didn't know if he should be grateful that the Anbu guarding his room were stupid bastards, or disappointed in the security of peace times. Either way, he was glad he had his answer about changing things. When you can do something that will stop something bad from happening, you should. There is no point in coming back if you don't change anything. Now that didn't mean he was going to change everything, but he was going to try and fix as much as possible, without endangering the future. Naruto would make sure the Hyuga clan becomes one and that Neji doesn't believe he is trapped by fate. Naruto's thoughts stopped when he heard his dad get up, the Anbu no doubt telling him what happened. In a few seconds he could hear his father opening the door to his room to check on him. Naruto lay still, breathing slowly. He felt his dad run a hand through his hair, then ordered 2 squads of Anbu to stay with him until he returned. It was a beautiful day in Konoha. The sun was shining brightly and there was a cool breeze in the air. All was peaceful. The children were at the academe learning, and the adults were working in their shops or other jobs. It was so serene you could hear the birds chirping. Naruto Namikaze. Stop. So much for that. A 6-year-old Naruto was running across rooftops, and through alleyways while being chased by 5 Chunin and 3 Anbu. The whole time he was laughing madly. See how this all started was Naruto had been enrolled in the academe this year, and after a few months of being lectured by Iruka, simply put, Naruto got bored. And since Naruto is Naruto, he decided the best way to deal with this was to revive one of his most famous pranks, with extras. However, this wasn't his first prank in his new life, so all anyone had to do to figure out why 8 ninja were chasing the Hokage's son was to look up at the Hokage mountain, which had gotten a makeover. The first looked like a woman and had green eyes with red lipstick, eyeliner, blush, the whole deal. The second basically looked like a clown, white face, red nose, and a blue tear on the left side of his face. The third, old man Hokage, had a nosebleed, bugged out eyes, and his mouth hanging open like he'd just seen Naruto's sexy jutsu. The fourth, dad, had blue eyes, gray hair and a lot of wrinkles. Naruto was very proud of his masterpiece for many reasons, but the main one was that he finally figured out how to enforce the paint with chakra. So the paint would not only stay there for days no matter what you tried to take it off, only Naruto knew how, but it glowed brightly. The Anbu would never even have suspected him, except for his reputation, and if they didn't see him half covered in paint. Yes, Naruto was sure that was why they had started chasing him. Right now though, he is a 6-year-old kid successfully staying ahead of 8 wait now 10 fully trained adult shinobi, and he was having a lot of fun doing it. Naruto sighed. Though it was fun, it was time to ditch them before they came up with some plan to catch him. He jumped up to a roof and immediately jumped back down to an open street, made a shadow clone which ran as soon as it was made, and he transformed into a cat. Before any of the ninja following him saw, all the Chunin and Anbu ran after his clone. Once all the ninja were out of sight, Naruto changed back and started walking. Bam! Only to walk right into someone. Naruto fell on his butt and turned his head up to glare at whoever had knocked him down. Then he noticed it was his father, who was looking down at him with a stern face and one raised eyebrow. Naruto gulped, rubbed the back of his head, and laughed nervously. Hi dad. Minato just let out his breath in a huff and picked Naruto up off the ground. They were home in a flash and Minato put Naruto down on the couch, sitting down next to him at an angle to look at him. Minato broke the silence. Do you know why so many ninja were chasing you? Naruto's mouth answered before his brain could save him, because only a few couldn't catch me. Naruto grimaced realizing what he said when he was already in trouble. Minato's mouth was twitching though, trying very hard not to smile at his son. I meant more why they started chasing you in the first place, and why are you covered in paint? Minato moved on trying to get to the point. Naruto sighed, you haven't seen the Hokage monument today have you? Naruto asked. Minato blinked confused so Naruto just pointed at a window which had a good view on the mountain. Minato raised an eyebrow at his son, but got up and looked out the window. What could the monument have to do with, holy shit? Minato thought as he looked out the window and his mouth dropped. He really wanted to laugh at the sight, but knew that wouldn't be the most responsible thing to do. How did he make it glow like that? So he focused on the part that annoyed him. You made me old, he stated without turning around so Naruto wouldn't see the smirk on his face. Naruto's face dropped to just look blank. I pranked the whole village by defacing the monument, and all he can say is that I made him look old. He could hear Kyuubi on the inside laughing his off. Naruto tried to block him out so he wouldn't start laughing, but it was too late. He was already snickering. Minato heard his son muffle a laugh and turned around to see him almost doubled over. Minato couldn't help but smirk at his son's antics. Naruto, what's so funny, huh? He asked, still bemused. Naruto managed to laugh out. All you care about, as I made you, look old. Minato could hold it now and laughed with Naruto. After a few minutes though, you know you're still in trouble, Naruto. Naruto started to pout at that. But dad, it was just a joke, come on, it's funny. Naruto whined. Minato replied, not for the one who has to wash it off. Naruto grumbled under his breath, they can try. Low enough his father couldn't hear. Besides, you also skipped class, to do your prank. Minato said. Naruto ended up being the one forced to clean the paint off the monument, and he wasn't allowed to have ramen for dinner. Naruto grumbled the whole time about not having any ramen, and that no one would get to know just how resilient his special paint was. He used the secret way to get it off when his Anbu guards weren't looking. The secret happened to be sake, so he just poured some into the soapy water bucket he was given to clean the paint off with. Minato showed up at sunset to bring Naruto home, but he wasn't done yet. Hey Naruto. Minato greeted him. Naruto looked up and gave him a bored look before grumbling, hey dad. Minato sighed. He didn't want Naruto upset with him, but he had to punish him somehow, even though it was funny. Minato wanted to cheer him up now, so, Naruto, if you get done quickly, I'll teach you a cool jutsu tomorrow. Naruto's head shot up, his eyes shining. Really? Alright. Naruto stood up, made a familiar seal with his hands and shouted, Kage Bushin no Jutsu. When the smoke cleared, there were over 200 Narutos. They began running around the monument cleaning. It was like a hurricane, but instead of leaving destruction in their wake, the Narutos left a freshly cleaned Hokage monument. Naruto was done in less than 10 minutes, and immediately turned back to his dad. So what you gonna teach me? Naruto asked with a smirk. Minato laughed and flashed them home, you'll find out tomorrow. He told Naruto, ruffling his hair. So just eat your dinner and get a good night's sleep. Naruto just rolled his eyes at him, and started inhaling his non-ramen dinner. It happened to be good. Chicken with rice and veggies, not bad. Naruto thought. Sasuke, the Uchiha massacre is in a year and a half, they could already be planning it. I have to figure out what to do about that, and how. I need to start gathering more information. I might have already changed it by keeping my dad the Yondaime alive. I still need to be sure though. I'll wait till the date is a little closer before I start spying on them. It's a good thing I know the exact date, thanks to my time Sasuke. But everything went well with the Hyuga incident. Hinata never told anyone she saw me there. Though she did try to ask me about it a few times. It's a good thing she's young and I'm good at distraction. Hinata probably wouldn't ask again until someone brings it up. That I'll worry about then. Otherwise there is one other thing I want to do at this point in time but I'm not sure how to do it. Naruto thought. What is it, Kit? Kyuubi asked, now listening to his thoughts. Gaara. He is alone right now. I know I can't do much or it would completely ruin any plans for the Chunin exam, but there must be something I can do. I just want him to know he is not alone, but I can't just run over to Suna, it's too far and my dad would know if I left a clone in my place. Kid, I might have an idea. What is it? We might be able to make a special clone combined of both of our chakra. If my calculations are right, it would last for 7 days normally, or if it would be running to Suna, it would last about 1 day after it arrived. That would give me enough time to find Gaara. How do we do it? You will make it like a normal cage bushin but add denser chakra and use my chakra for a bit less than half. But not now, you have to get going, we'll try tonight. Okay, thanks Q. Naruto, breakfast is ready. Naruto heard his father yell from the kitchen. Coming. Naruto chirped as he ran down the stairs. Despite popular belief because of him and Minato always eating ramen, his father was a fairly good cook. Naruto arrived in the kitchen to the smell of scrambled eggs and bacon. They had finished eating and were out the door quickly, heading for the training grounds. They got to the training ground and Naruto just had to know now. What jutsu are you gonna teach me? Naruto half asked, half yelled. Minato only grinned at him. My own personal jutsu, Rasengan. Naruto deflated a little but then went back to excited. This time I'll learn it one-handed. Plus I can show off how quick I learn it. Naruto thought. Minato showed him the jutsu and Naruto played the perfect actor, letting his eyes practically glow at the jutsu as if he were seeing it for the first time, and even let out an odd, ooh. Minato smiled at the reaction from his son. And the Best Actor of the Year award goes to, yes, Naruto Namikaze. Naruto thought as Kyuubi cheered in the background. Alright, there are 3 steps to learning this jutsu. Minato said as Naruto looked like he was hanging on to every word. The first is to pop this water balloon. Minato pulled out a bag filled with water balloons with your chakra, by spinning it fast in all directions until pop. Minato lectured as he demonstrated popping the balloon he was holding. Access online encyclopedias. Naruto took one of the balloons, determined to only use one hand, and started rotating his chakra. Faster and faster. Now don't get discouraged if you don't get it right, pop. Minato was cut off as Naruto's balloon burst. Naruto looked up at his father with a proud grin on his face to see Minato just staring at him, his mouth slightly hanging open. Naruto's grin widened into a fox-like grin and asked, "Did I do it right?" Minato snapped out of his freeze and let out a small laugh. "Hey, yeah, you did great." Minato said, still sounding odd. "All right, step 2. Minato flashed away and was back in 2 seconds with a big bag of rubber balls. Pulling one out, he explained, "Step 2 is power. You have to use enough chakra to pop this rubber ball." Then Minato popped one of them, showing him how. Naruto took one of the rubber balls and started pumping chakra in it. This time he didn't get it on his first try and only made a small hole in it. Minato looked at it. Not bad, but you have to pop it like I did and make it explode. Keep trying. Minato went and sat down by a tree. Naruto was happy that his father stayed with him as he trained. Before, his teachers would always tell him what to do, then leave him to sort it out by himself. Naruto was at it for about 10 minutes before Minato heard a bang. Minato had wide eyes, then just laughed. Way to go, Naruto. Minato called over to the now laughing Naruto. Naruto ran over to him shouting, I did it. Minato got up smiling at Naruto. You keep this up, you'll shatter the record for learning this jutsu. Naruto beamed at him. What's the next step? Naruto asked, excited. Well, you have to combine what you've learned. You use the rotation you learned popping the balloons, and the power you used to pop the rubber ball. To make a sphere, but this time you don't pop it, you have to hold its shape to the ball. Minato explained the last step as easy as he could. This time Naruto really was listening hard. He wanted to be able to use the Rasengan with one hand and wanted to make his father proud by actually learning something and not just showing what he already knew. Naruto had been trying for hours and it was almost time to meet Sasuke. Minato was worried he was pushing Naruto too far too fast. When he saw that his son was trying so hard, his hands were burned by the chakra. Minato told Naruto that he had done well and they could try tomorrow so he could take care of the burns, but Naruto just wouldn't give up. He was 6 for crying out loud. Don't most year-olds cry when they scrap their knee? Minato remembered then he still had never seen Naruto cry, ever. Naruto, we have to go and to meet Sasuke. Minato tried again to get Naruto to stop. Naruto didn't turn around but called out, okay, just one more try, I almost got it. And he did. Minato could tell he was getting close. Naruto concentrated, powering up the Rasengan slowly as he faced the tree in front of him. Then he snapped his eyes open and charged the unfortunate tree, and plowed right through it. Minato jumped up as he saw Naruto falling down from chakra exhaustion. He caught his son just before Naruto would have hit the ground. Minato checked Naruto over, finding nothing but the burns and low chakra. Minato sighed to himself. He is just like his mother. Minato smiled though. Well done, Naruto, you did it. Minato said to the unconscious Naruto, his smile becoming full of pride. Minato carried Naruto home in his arms. They still had an hour before Sasuke showed up. So Minato laid Naruto on the couch and started cleaning, healing, and bandaging his hands. Noticing that they were already healing by themselves, Minato thought of Kyuubi. At least you're doing something useful for him. Minato got up after bandaging Naruto's hands and got a washcloth. Minato knew that Naruto wouldn't get up in time to get a bath before Sasuke came, so he wet the washcloth and wiped the sweat off his son's face, and dirt off his arms, then brushed Naruto's shorts off. Minato sighed. That was as good as he was going to get without a bath. But Minato couldn't help but to smile as he looked at his sleeping son. 6 years old and he has already mastered my Rasengan in one day, no one morning. Minato thought. Then turned around. It was almost lunchtime and Sasuke would be here soon. An hour later, Minato had just put ramen ready to eat on the table, when he heard a knock at the door. Come on in, Sasuke. Minato called to the door. Sasuke walked it to see Naruto sleeping on the couch. He stopped near Naruto and called out to where he heard Minato yell from, hello. Minato walked in then. Hey Sasuke, lunch is ready. Don't worry about Naruto, he is just a bit tired. Sasuke noticed Naruto's nose twitching. Minato saw Sasuke looking and followed his eyes smirking when he heard Naruto mumble, ramen. Sasuke almost laughed at that. Almost Uchihas don't laugh after all. Naruto got up zombie style, passing them both, seeming to not notice them with his eyes still closed, and followed his nose to the kitchen. Minato and Sasuke just stared at him as he began eating like that. Sasuke watched. Is he still sleeping? He asked Minato. I don't know. Minato replied, still staring at Naruto. And they say I'm a ramen nut. Minato added after a second. At the word ramen though, Naruto opened his eyes, with his chopsticks still full of ramen. Huh, how'd I get here? Naruto looked around for a moment, saw the ramen in front of him, shrugged and resumed eating. Minato and Sasuke both deadpanned, deciding not to think about it though they started eating their lunch too. After lunch, Sasuke and Naruto spent the rest of the day playing inside because Minato didn't want Naruto overdoing himself again today. Soon though, Sasuke noticed the bandages on Naruto's hands. What did you do to your hands, Naruto? Sasuke asked, looking at the bandages. Naruto looked down at his hands and smiled, knowing his father had worried enough to clean his wounds and patch him up. He even noticed he wasn't as dirty. Dad was teaching me a new jutsu and my chakra burned my hands. Naruto told him with a smirk. Sasuke was a little jealous that Naruto and his father were so close but was curious too. Really, what he teach you? I learned a fire jutsu from my father. Sasuke replied. He taught me his Rasengan, he made it. It took a while but I mastered it and it's really cool. What kind of fire jutsu? Naruto asked. Access online encyclopedias. Fireball Jutsu, Gukaku no Jutsu, great fireball technique. Father said it's a symbol of our clan's pride, and that an Uchiha is considered an adult when they master it. Sasuke said, looking proud. Naruto smirked at him. How about we go out and I'll show you Rasengan and you can show me your fireball jutsu? Sasuke got up. Okay. And they headed for the door when, where do you two think you're going? Minato asked, leaning in the doorway. I just want to show Sasuke Rasengan, Dad, and Sasuke learned this really cool fireball jutsu. Naruto looked up at his dad, almost pleading. Minato sighed. Fine, but I'm coming too. I doubt Sasuke wants to carry you home if you pass out. They headed out the door to the nearby lake. Minato didn't want a forest fire. Sasuke ran to the end of the pier, did some hand signs and blew out a huge ball of fire. Naruto had seen it a million times, mostly from Sasuke. But acted surprised. That's really cool, Sasuke. Come on, I'll show you mine. That's why Naruto suggested going out in the first place. He wanted to show off. Naruto made sure Sasuke could see as he rammed his one-handed Rasengan through another unfortunate tree. Sasuke thought it was awesome. Wow, you went right through that tree, Naruto. Sasuke said, excited. Well done, Naruto. I still can't believe you mastered that in just a few hours. Minato turned to Sasuke. You both have mastered jutsu that your classmates don't know now, and good ones. Minato praised the boys. Sasuke wished he got praise like that from his father, but he thanked Minato anyway. While Naruto just grinned and cheered. Later that night, Sasuke was sleeping over and they had gone to bed about 2 hours ago. Naruto got up quietly. He had been talking to Kyuubi inside his mindscape for a while now about the chakra clone, and they both agreed that it would be his clone, but it would look like a fox, so it would be less likely to be attacked. Naruto walked to the other side of the room and thought of what he wanted his clone to look like, and started carefully making his chakra more dense than normal, then with Kyuubi's help mixed the fox's chakra with his own. He whispered the name of his new jutsu, Kage Kitsune Bushin Jutsu. When the smoke cleared, a golden fox with big blue eyes appeared in front of Naruto. Please tell me you can talk. Naruto whispered, hoping the jutsu hadn't woken up Sasuke. The golden fox looked up and smirked. How the fox could smirk? Well, Naruto figured some things are better left secret. Of course I can talk. I am your clone. The fox whispered back. Naruto grinned at him. Then you know what to do. Quickly, I'm worried about him. Naruto said as he opened the window. The fox nodded and jumped out, hitting the ground with barely a sound and started running. He was gone before the Anbu knew anything happened. Naruto turned around heading back to bed when he saw Sasuke sitting up looking at him. What was that about? Sasuke asked. Naruto didn't want to lie to his best friend, so he settled for vague. I was just sending a message to a friend. He answered. Who? Sasuke was just curious now, not suspicious. Gaara. But don't tell, he is a secret. Naruto answered truthfully. Giving Sasuke Gaara's name won't cause too many problems, I hope. Okay. Sasuke didn't ask any more questions and they soon fell asleep. Naruto woke up the next day, and Sasuke was already getting up. They ate breakfast and Naruto talked Sasuke into training together, not that he needed much prompting. Minato had been called to deal with some stupid dispute, about some genin refusing to go and find the fire daimyo's wife's damn cat Tora, again. To be honest, he'd complained too, but this was his day off, so Minato was a bit irked. Anyway, Naruto and Sasuke went without him. They had trained together, without supervision before. Well, except for the Anbu who were constantly watching Naruto. Those Anbu, I have to sneak away anytime I want to do some real training. Troublesome. Damn, I'm starting to sound like Shika. Naruto thought. Naruto and Sasuke were sparing as usual. It was the favorite part of training for both of them. Plus, most of the other training they didn't need a partner. Naruto never went all out on Sasuke, but he always made it a pretty even fight. After learning Rasengan the other day again though, he wanted to finish it, wind element and all. So Naruto snuck away from the Anbu watching, leaving Sasuke with a slightly more powerful clone than usual so it wouldn't pop if it got hit. Naruto reached his destination quickly. It was the river where Jiraiya taught him water walking in his first life. He smiled when he got there. It was the same as the first time he saw it. He could almost imagine Jiraiya sitting by the bushes peeping on the girls in the water as he trained. Naruto shook his head. He came here for a reason, and if his dad came to check on him before he got back and realized he'd ditch his Anbu again, he'd be in trouble. Starting his training, Naruto made 500 clones. His reserves were growing fast, and had them all grab a leaf from one of the trees around them. Then they began to try and cut them with wind chakra. After an hour, Naruto had half his clones dispel. What was left of the clones started cutting leaves a minute after that. He had to get back soon now though, so he dispelled the rest of his clones after about 10 more minutes. Before he dispelled the clones though, they had finished mastering the leaf-cutting exercise. He was learning it even faster than the first time because he already knew what to do. He just had to let his young body feel it out. Naruto knew he had to go back now, but he still had a lot of chakra. So he made as many clones as he could at once, which happened to be 500, and had them all position themselves around the waterfall. When there were too many, they would climb up the wall beside the waterfall with chakra above the other clones. Then they all began trying to cut the waterfall in half with wind chakra. Naruto instructed half of them to dispel after 2 hours so the others would learn faster. As he left, Naruto got back and slipped back into the spar with Sasuke, his entrance being masked by his clones. Just in time too, Naruto thought as he saw his father coming. Scene change. The fox clone ran all night, and kept running for 2 days, only resting a few hours when it became too tired. When the fox clone arrived in front of Suna, he realized it probably would be the best idea to go through the front gates. Lucky for him, Gaara had once shown him a secret underground way into Suna, he had found as a child. Anime and manga. He slipped in unnoticed, but he didn't want to just run around the whole village looking for Gaara. So where to start? Well, it's late afternoon and there's no academy today in Konoha, so I don't think Suna would have him in school right now either. The place I went when I was around 6 years old in my first life, when there was nothing I had to do, was go to the playground. So I'll check there first. Sure enough, the third playground that Fox Naruto came across, he smelled Gaara. He followed the scent and found Gaara sitting alone on a swing, holding a teddy bear and the kanji for love already on his young forehead. Naruto knew what that meant. Gaara's uncle had already betrayed him and Gaara had already Fox Naruto felt a sharp pain in his stomach that he knew the original Naruto felt too, at seeing his friend, with that look like he was empty, and alone. That darkness Naruto had been trapped in once in the last life, and he would never forget how painful it was to be alone. Not this time. The Fox Naruto thought. He won't be alone. Fox Naruto started toward Gaara slowly. Everyone kept their distance from Gaara though, so no one even noticed him approaching the Jinchuriki. Gaara looked up at him when he was about 10 feet away. They were in the shadows, no one could really see them now unless they were willing to come closer to Gaara. Which they weren't. Fox Naruto raised his head when Gaara looked at him, trying to look non-threatening. Gaara got off the swing but didn't look scared as most children would to see a huge fox watching them. Not that he knew by now his sand would protect him. Gaara's face was impassive, but slightly curious too. He walked halfway to the Fox Naruto and knelt down. Fox Naruto walked the rest of the way to his friend and licked the hand Gaara had held out to him. Gaara smiled slightly and petted him. Hey, your eyes look like mine. Do you want to be my friend? Gaara asked the fox, still looking into his eyes. Fox Naruto almost broke. His friend, despite what his uncle did, still had innocence. Fox Naruto nodded his head. Gaara looked surprised that he answered, "Do you understand me?" Fox Naruto spoke this time. "Yes, Gaara. I am a clone. My original sent me to check on you and be your friend." Gaara blinked. A few seconds passed as it looked like Gaara was thinking then, "You'll be my friend?" Gaara asked. The fox nodded. "Who is your original? Why did he send you?" Gaara questioned the fox as he sat on his hunches. "My original's name is Naruto Uzumaki Namikaze, but you must tell no one. He has risked a great deal to even send me to you. He did this because he is like you, Gaara. He is the Jinchuriki of the Kyuubi no Kitsune." Gaara's eyes were wide. "You mean he is a monster too?" "There is someone else like me." Gaara sounded hopeful now. "That's why your eyes look like mine." The fox Naruto though closed his eyes tight. "Gaara, you are not a monster, and neither is he. But he is like you. We are the original and you are the same age. He knew of you and wanted you to not be alone. He knows what that's like." Gaara broke at that. His face was still blank, but his eyes were a little wider and then tears overflowed and spilled out his eyes. He made no move to wipe them away or even seemed to acknowledge that they were even there. When Fox Naruto saw that, he came around beside Gaara and nuzzled his head into Gaara's chest. He may have been a Naruto clone, but he was still a fox, and it was an instinctual reaction to comfort his friend. He thought it was a little weird after he did it, but Gaara latched onto him and started crying into his fur. So he didn't really care. He stayed with Gaara and let him cry into his fur till it was getting dark. Gaara had calmed down but was still holding onto Fox Naruto's fur. "Gaara, it's getting late. We should get you home." Fox Naruto said. "You'll come too?" Gaara sniffed. The fox's eyes softened. "Yes, Gaara, I'll stay with you, but Gaara, I can only be here for about 1 to 2 days. It was supposed to be 1, but I got here quick." The fox said softly. Gaara looked scared. "You're gonna leave me?" He looked like he would cry again. "No, Gaara, I will never really leave you. I will always be your friend. But I am a clone. I will not last forever. When I dispel, my memories will go to the original. I am him just as much as he is me." Gaara still looked ready to cry. The fox Naruto couldn't stand seeing his friend sad because of him. "How about this, Gaara? In 1 week after I dispel, I will come back to see you." Gaara was still not happy that he would leave but gave him a small smile and nodded. After Gaara went up through his house to his room, and Fox Naruto snuck in through the window. Gaara remembered something. Hey, since your real name is a secret, what do I call you? Gaara asked. Fox Naruto blinked. That's a good question. How about you call me, Kit? Yeah, Kit. Like a young fox. The newly named Kit said. Gaara's lips were twitching. You mean like a fox, baby? Gaara finally gave in and smirked at him. Kit laughed. Yep, it's what Kyuubi calls me and it is kind of fitting. Except the baby part, but he is pretty old. Gaara stopped smirking at him. You mean the Kyuubi is nice? Kit rolled his eyes at him then sighed. Well, Kyuubi didn't used to be, and I still wouldn't call him nice. Heck, the first time I met him I think he said something about eating me. But I kind of grew on him, so now he helps me out when I need it. I heard about the trouble Shukaku is giving you though, you know I might be able to help with that. Kit finished think about how to fix Gaara's seal. Scene change. Naruto had felt a pain in his stomach a day ago that he knew came from his fox clone, and knew it was about Gaara. Because that pain was the pain of loneliness he had felt so long ago. Despite a few of the villagers still looking at him with caution and sometime even glaring, it was far better than his first life. His father helped too. With him alive, Naruto knew he wouldn't have to be alone. But he would never forget that pain either. Right now though Naruto was in class, he had finished most of his wind chakra training on the weekend, and decided that when he got out of class he would start trying to recreate the Udama Rasengan, to build up the power he would need for the Rasen Shuriken. Naruto was started out of his thoughts though when Iruka called on him. Naruto, can you explain what a genjutsu does? Iruka asked. After Naruto got out of class he said goodbye to Sasuke at the gate and headed straight for the training field. Naruto sighed when he sensed his Anbu guards following him. He would have to ditch them with a clone, again. When Naruto got to the training grounds he made a bunch of clones to train lightly, so while the guards watched his clones, he slipped away. A few minutes later Naruto arrived at one of the training grounds out of the way, so it wouldn't matter if he destroyed it in his training. Which he would. He was getting really good at ditching those Anbu that might have been his quickest time yet. His dad still didn't know how often he ditches his guards. Got to love those clones. Naruto started by making the normal Rasengan, then he tried pushing more chakra to make it bigger. The Rasengan was getting bigger, then boom. It blew up right in his face. Damn it. Naruto complained to himself. I lost the shape manipulation when I made it bigger. That's why I needed a clone to help me the first time I made it. I'll just master it with a clone again first, then I'll try one-handed. With that plan Naruto made 400 clones and got to work. There were explosions going off every few seconds for the next 3 hours before finally a pair of the clone made a perfect Udama Rasengan. Naruto saw it and smiled at the crater it made as those two clones used it. He dispelled all the clones gaining their experience. After a moment of letting the information settle in his head, Naruto recreated the 400 clones and set them back to work using only their own hands so he would not need a clone to help make it. By the time he got it right it was getting dark, his father would be looking for him soon. Naruto dispelled his clones, leaving only the ones with the Anbu. He felt the drain on him even with the chakra reserves he has, his body is still only 6. Naruto flopped down in the crater he just made, to catch his breath. Just 10 minutes. Then I have to get back before dad realizes I'm not with the Anbu. Naruto thought. Unfortunately for Naruto, all that training took his mind off that fact. He had already sent off a much more durable clone, which decided to poof right then. The fox clone's memories entered Naruto's mind and he smiled. Gaara was alright and now they are friends again. Then Naruto felt it, and had just enough time to think, oh shit, before he blacked out. Minato Pav. Minato had been watching Naruto's clones train for a while now, thinking the real one was in there somewhere. It was now getting dark though. Naruto. Minato called out to get his son's attention. He rolled his eyes when they all turned to him. How about you call it a day and we go get some dinner? It wasn't really a question. The clones looked nervous for a moment that passed so quick the Anbu probably didn't even notice. Okay, Dad. Naruto chirped. One Naruto ran up to him smiling, while all the others poofed. Minato made a skeptical face at him and cupped Naruto's face with one hand. You're not hot. Only clones don't get hot. Minato stated, narrowing his eyes slightly at the clone that looked down and shuffled his feet, knowing he'd been caught. Minato had taken to checking his son for being a clone since Naruto tricked him when he was 2 with a clone who went to the office with him. Kneeling down to the clone, Minato put his hands on the clone's shoulders and asked quietly, "Where is the real Naruto?" Trying to be calm as he started to worry. The clone looked up wondering what to do. If the original was in trouble he needed to tell his father, but if he wasn't he'd be in trouble. Scratch that, he was already in trouble the moment he was caught. The clone sighed. "Follow me," he said, and jumped into the trees heading to where he knew the original had gone. They arrived there in minutes. He should be somewhere around here. The clone informed Minato just before he poofed. Minato didn't have to look long before he found a clearing littered with craters. He was really starting to worry now. He scanned the craters and soon spotted a mop of blonde hair, in the biggest one. He flashed over to his son across the clearing in less than a second. Minato kneeled down, checking Naruto over. There was no blood or bruises, but he sensed Naruto was very low on chakra. Not enough to endanger his life, but definitely enough to knock him out for a few days. Minato went to pick Naruto up and noticed the chakra burns on his son's hands. They were worse than when he learned Rasengan. Minato shut his eyes tight, realizing it was at least partly his fault, and let his breath out in a small huff. After picking Naruto up carefully, Minato looked back as he was leaving the training grounds with his small son sleeping on his shoulder. Just what was he doing here? How did he do it? And why did he have to ditch his guards, again? Minato thought as he looked at the craters again. Naruto Pav. Naruto woke up to his whole body feeling sore and didn't move. He hadn't worked that hard since he came back in time. He was getting lazy in such a peaceful place, but he knew that peace wouldn't last for long, if he did nothing. Naruto sighed softly, and then stilled, noticing someone was with him. He relaxed though when he recognized the scent and opened his eyes to see his father. His dad had his head resting on his folded arms and was leaning on the side of the bed he was in. Naruto felt a pang of guilt seeing how worried he made his father. Dismissing the fact he was in a hospital for the moment, Naruto reached over and put his hand softly in his father's hair, trying not to wake him. "I'm sorry, Dad," Naruto whispered quietly as he ran his hand through his dad's hair, which was identical to his own. Minato shifted as Naruto rested his newly bandaged hand on top of his father's own hand. Minato looked up sleepily at his son and realized he was finally awake. "Naruto, you're awake," Minato said quietly as he sat onto Naruto's bed and leaned over him. Minato hugged Naruto softly, being extra careful of him, and then kissed his forehead. "You had me worried, Naruto," Minato said as he ran his hand through Naruto's hair. Naruto leaned into the touch. In his last life he didn't have a parent to show him affection like this, and he loved how it felt. It made him feel protected. "Gomen nasai, Dad. I didn't want you to worry," Naruto whispered, looking down. Minato sighed. "What were you doing out there, that you thought you needed to ditch your guards? You know they're there to protect you," Minato asked, still too relieved that he was okay to be mad. Naruto sighed. "I know, but I was trying to make Rasengan better." And I didn't want them watching me. Naruto still couldn't lie to him. Trick yes, outright lie no. Minato blinked then blinked again. That wasn't really what he was expecting. He saw the chakra burns, so he thought Naruto could have been practicing it, but then he saw all the craters. Even then, though, he still didn't think his 6-year-old son was trying to improve his jutsu. Naruto, I saw the area where you were training. What did you do to it? Minato asked almost in awe. Naruto smiled up at him and replied childishly, I made it bigger. Then, completely obliterating the serious atmosphere, he gave Minato the cheesiest grin. It's called Udama Rasengan. Naruto finished, putting 2 bandaged fingers up in a V sign. Minato let out a breath that sounded more like a laugh, and smiled at his son. That great, Naruto, I'd like to see it, when we get you out of here. Minato said, sounding proud. Then Minato's voice changed to upset. But if you don't stop ditching your Anbu guards, you will never leave my side again. Minato's voice changed back to calm and he smiled. Got it? Naruto nodded, a little scared. Then Minato got up. Good, in a sing-song voice, now if I can trust you to stay put a minute, I'm going to see how soon we can get out of here. Minato said as he went out to find a nurse. Naruto almost laughed at how his dad just changed from calm to mad to happy. Damn, I guess I really worried him this time. I gotta be more careful. Well, at least I know Gaara is alright, and we're already friends. I got to remember to send him another Kitsune clone in a few days though. But now it will be a few days to a week before I can sneak away again and start on the Rasen Shuriken. I don't know why I bother, though. I can't use it without breaking every bone, muscle, and cell in half my arm without Sage Mode. I might have an idea about that kit. You just need the toad to knock the natural energy out of you when you get too much, right? That's right, if I can't knock it out in time, I'll turn into a toad statue. Alright, well, have you tried summoning the toads yet? No, but I haven't technically signed the contract yet. I didn't think it would work. Well, it's worth a try before you go blowing up your arm. Besides, the contract summons from another dimension, so it must be some kind of space-time jutsu. So it is possible that your contract with them is still valid even if your name doesn't appear on the scroll. But will they remember me? Would I be summoning them from this timeline, or mine? I don't know, Kit. I am not a summon, you will just have to try and see. Naruto was pulled from his thought when his father came back into the room. Alright, Naruto, they said that I can take you home, as long as you rest. Minato told Naruto, giving him a look that meant he was going to rest whether he liked it or not. Minato carried him all the way home and up the stairs to his room, laying him in his bed. Because it was late enough, he should be sleeping anyway. Naruto was sitting on his bed and his stomach grumbled. He put his hand behind his head and smirked when Minato looked at him. Alright, I'll get you some food, but you stay in bed. Minato said, rolling his eyes at his son. Naruto watched him leave and smiled. Arigato, father. Later that night, Naruto added, meet Gaara, next to 6 years old, on the timeline scroll under, current. Then sealed it back up and hid it back under the floorboards beneath his bed. Content in the changes he had made so far, but the Uchiha massacre is only 1 year away now. Naruto, now 7 years old, has spent the last 7 months preparing for the soon-to-be Uchiha massacre. Training his body in speed and strength, which the clones couldn't help speed up. Then he finally remastered the Rasen Shuriken last month. Naruto had yet to try to summon the toads, though he didn't have time since his father had threatened the Anbu that if they lost him again they'd be demoted to Chunin. So it was a bit harder to shake them, but he had learned how to seal away chakra in the mark that Kyuubi had him draw on himself in blood right before they came back. The mark of the Kyuubi had stayed on him, following him literally through time. Kyuubi had said that the seal did more than help them go through time, but wouldn't say exactly what. which did annoy Naruto, but since the fox wasn't spilling and nothing bad had happened yet, he filed it away for later. Plus the seal did disappear when he wasn't using it. And Naruto did have other things to worry about anyway. The Uchiha massacre was only 2 months away now, and Naruto has been actively spying on the Uchihas, while also eavesdropping on his father's meetings. Trying to find out if they knew of the coup yet, or if there even still was going to be one after he had changed things. Naruto had also taken to sneaking out in the middle of the night to the Hokage Tower to look through any files on the Uchiha. Today he finally found one answer when one of the clones spying on a younger Uchiha followed him to a secret meeting with another older Uchiha in the woods. The clone overheard them talking about the coup, and that it was going well, and they even name a few of the co-conspirators, which the original Naruto wrote down as soon as the clone proofed. Good thing he didn't skip class today, or he wouldn't have had a pencil and paper ready so fast. Scene change. Suna, Gaara and Kit were just outside Suna playing with a ball. They were outside Suna so no one would see them. Kit had used his solid transformation, that he usually used for his sexy no jutsu, to change him into his normal human form so that they could play as kids. Gaara was very happy with his friend. A week after they met, Naruto, or Kit, had returned just as he said he would. After that he would only come once a month because it was so far in between Suna and Konoha, which Gaara learned that was where Naruto lived, and that way they were less likely to be caught. The next time Naruto threw the ball back, he made a hand seal and called out, "Cage ball jutsu." Suddenly there wasn't one ball coming at Gaara but 10. Gaara reacted instantly, not wanting to drop the balls and lose. His sand shot out and caught them all. He smirked at Naruto under his sand that caught all the balls, and saw Naruto grinning back at him, so he threw them all back. His blonde friend, instead of running to catch all the balls, made the same hand seal as before and called out, "Kage Bushin Jutsu." Now there were 10 Narutos too, and each caught a ball. Gaara smiled at his friend. This game just got a lot more fun. By the time they were done, they had been running around for hours chasing balls going in every direction with clones, sand, small jutsu, and even themselves. Never had so many balls been kept in the air so long by just 2 kids. They were now laying down on the ground upside down from each other, panting. After a few moments Gaara spoke, "Naruto, we'll be friends forever, right?" He could use Naruto's name when they were outside Suna where no one could hear. "Of course, Gaara, we will always be friends. I think even before we met we were, like we were always meant to be friends. Because of what we're kind of brothers of circumstance." Gaara looked at him with a small smile, then looked down. "You know I have an older brother and sister, but they're afraid of me. They don't understand." Naruto sat up and sighed. "I know it's hard, Gaara, but just keep trying. They can never really understand because they will never go through what we have, but that doesn't mean they won't ever try." Gaara sat up, sighed, and nodded. "I hope so, brother." Gaara had a small sheepish smile on his face when he looked up at Naruto. When Naruto heard the word, brother, he looked at Gaara and gave him a real smile that he showed few people. "Me too, brother." Scene change. Konoha. 1 month and 2 weeks later. It was late, but Naruto was still up going over what he would have to do. Right now he was preparing seals that would be useful if he got in over his head. Which he always did. He had stored about 2 taels worth of his own chakra in the last couple months in the Kyuubi seal, and had level 5 gravity seals on him that he could release if needed. Naruto found that his father did know about the impending coup and was having Itachi as an inside spy along with some Anbu investigating the Uchihas to find out who was in on the coup and those that weren't. The plan was to raid the compound, once they got the inside information, and arrest the ones in on the coup. If all went according to plan, Naruto wouldn't have to do much, but then since when was he that lucky? he may have been said to have had the devil's luck in the future, but that was with gambling or things of chance. It's not like that. Luck ever stop people from trying to or capture him, but he supposed that was why it was called the devil's luck. Done, Naruto thought. As that night Naruto finished all the preparations he could think of. Now all he had to do for the next 2 weeks was keep storing as much chakra as he could while not putting himself in danger, and keep training his body. 2 weeks wasn't enough time to do much else, but he was putting the finishing touches on the seal he made for Gaara. It was modeled after his own but with a few tweaks to be able to be put on top of the seal Gaara already has. Anime and manga, plus the seal will filter the Shukaku's chakra into Gaara's better, and keep Shukaku out of Gaara's head, unless Gaara wanted to speak with him. While the seal still let Gaara access the Biju's power, that was tricky. Naruto was very happy with the seal he made, and checked it over at least 3 times after he was done because it was going on his friend. Sealing was like an art though to Naruto, and he was a natural at it with his creativity. 1 week later, Naruto and Sasuke were sparring together in the Uchiha training grounds, using only taijutsu. They were pretty even, but Sasuke had more speed and Naruto had more power. Just like always. While Naruto actually had to try because even though he knew more their bodies were at the same level, this was the first time in months his mind could relax. Just letting his body flow through the motions, block, duck, sweep, dodge, counter and always keep moving. It was easy just letting every worry go until there was only the fight, and not even having to fight for survival. Just to fight for fun and to become strong with his friend. They spared for hours, finally taking a break when Itachi found them. Sasuke, dinner is ready. Naruto, you as always are welcome to join. Itachi told them. They stopped their training and yelled, coming. Then followed Itachi to the house for dinner. Some Anbu showed up at the Uchiha compound asking a few to come with them for some debriefing. The Uchihas were going peacefully. They were going to be questioned at the IT department. Naruto had been watching out of sight the whole day, sending a Kage Bushin to replace himself at the academy. Everything was going perfect. Then some of the Uchihas started fighting back, refusing to go with the Anbu. Soon Fugaku came out and was ordering the Uchiha into formations. It was all downhill from there. Flashback end. Naruto was watching all the battles around him while focusing on the fight his father was in. His father looked to be doing fine, so he was about to transform into an anonymous Anbu and help the others fighting when he heard Sasuke. Father! Sasuke shouted across the noise of the fighting. Sasuke was very confused why his father was fighting the Hokage, and why all the Uchiha were fighting Anbu and other Konoha ninjas. But he knew it had to stop. He could see this wasn't some spar, and to attack the Hokage outside of one was considered treason. Sasuke ran towards his father, ignoring all the battles around him, as Naruto watched him closely, ready to help him if something happened. Fugaku saw Sasuke coming and separated from Minato. The Yondaime stopped too, seeing a child in the way. Fugaku never took his eyes off Minato but spoke to Sasuke. Sasuke, get out of here now. He commanded. Sasuke would normally not question his father, but this was his home. He had to know, what's going on, father? Sasuke almost pleaded to know. Fugaku was silent. Yes, Fugaku, why don't you tell your son what you've done? Minato cut in. Sasuke looked at the Hokage, then back to his father, waiting for an answer. Fugaku's face showed no emotions, but his eyes were glaring daggers at the Yondaime. Instead of answering, Fugaku pushed Sasuke out of the way and attacked the Yondaime with the Great Fireball Jutsu. Minato jumped to the side out of the way as Fugaku ran right behind the fireball, throwing kunai at the Hokage, not letting up for a moment. Sasuke just sat where he had been, pushed on the ground, stunned, as his eyes took in the destruction around him. He hardly felt the hand on his shoulder and slowly turned to see a familiar face. Naruto. Sasuke looked at him confused why he was there. Naruto just looked down at him sadly. For a moment he looked very old. Come on Sasuke, let's get back. Naruto pulled Sasuke up by his arm, and walked him back to where he had been hiding. Naruto, what's going on? Sasuke asked in a quiet and scared voice. Naruto sighed and looked down. I don't know how to tell you Sasuke, but some of the Uchihas were forming a rebellion against the Hokage. Itachi was helping to find information, but your father is the leader of the coup. Sasuke looked up at Naruto horrified. His mind denied it and he tried to voice it was wrong, but he couldn't. The look on his best friend's face wouldn't let him, and he remembered the last few weeks things had been strange at home. He still didn't understand though, why. Naruto looked sadly at him. There is story for that I will tell you later, but the simple version they wanted more power. They wanted to rule Konoha instead of just protecting it. And they could have started a war because of it, maybe still could. A single tear ran down Sasuke's young face as he and his best friend watched their fathers try and each other. Subscribing to anime streaming services. Minato quickly dodged the shrunken that was being thrown at him and flashed through hand seals for a water jutsu, Mizoripa, violent water wave. Minato called out the attack. The powerful stream of water hit Fugaku fully, throwing him back into one of the walls and soaking him through. As Fugaku was being thrown back by the jet stream he saw something that would give him an advantage. The Yondaime watched as his opponent seemed to be running away from him. It wasn't the first time it had happened, but Fugaku was not the type to run away. Something was wrong. Then he saw where Fugaku was going and his mind froze even as he started running. He knew he wouldn't make it. Fugaku was too far ahead. He yelled, Naruto. Sasuke was staring at the ground trying to understand, and Naruto had turned from the fight to watch Sasuke for just a few seconds when he heard his father scream. Naruto had never heard his father sound so desperate. He and Sasuke both whipped their heads to the scream. Fugaku was almost on top of them, with a kunai out and looking right at Naruto. Naruto didn't have time to think. He grabbed the back of Sasuke's shirt and threw him back. Turning quickly back to Fugaku, Naruto dodged Fugaku's grab at him and kicked him in the stomach. Hearing a satisfying oomph from Fugaku, he tried to jump back down. He couldn't. Fugaku had grabbed his foot when he kicked him and was pinning Naruto arms with his one arm around him, now with a kunai at his neck. Minato stopped dead, bring the words, if looks could, to a different level. Let my son go now. He ground out. Fugaku shivered at the intent rolling off Minato but pressed on. Call off the Anbu. Fugaku replied as a command. Minato cursed. He couldn't tell the Anbu to stop. It would be like surrendering, but that bastard had his son. Sasuke was just a few feet behind his father, who apparently deemed him not a threat. Sasuke emotions started moving from shock to anger. His father, who he had tried so hard to impress, was holding his best friend hostage. But he had to try one more time. Father, let Naruto go. Fugaku didn't even look at him. Leave Sasuke. Sasuke closed his eyes and tears slid down his face, but he did not whimper or whine. He reopened his eyes and spoke. That wasn't a request. Sasuke stated coldly. If anyone were looking, they would have noticed when Sasuke's eyes opened they were blood red with a single tomo comma in each eye. Sasuke charged his father's back using his ninja training. He jumped a few feet up and kicked the side of his father's head as hard as he could. Fugaku felt the blow to his head and realized it was his own son. It wasn't strong enough to make him drop his hostage, but Naruto felt the grip loosen. Naruto kicked off behind himself as hard as he could. freeing himself from Fugaku, and running to Sasuke's side as soon as his feet hit the ground. Minato was shocked but didn't hesitate. He ran past the boys and hit Fugaku with a chakra-enhanced punch, sending the Uchiha ahead a good 50 feet and through a few walls. Once he was sure Fugaku would be taking a while to get up, Minato turned to the boys. "Naruto, are you alright?" He wanted to pick his son up and just hold him for a while, but he knew he couldn't, they were still in danger. "I'm fine, Dad," Naruto replied instantly. It was habit by now. Minato knew he would probably say that no matter what, but he didn't see any injuries, so he moved on. "I thank you, Sasuke. I won't forget what you just did to help Naruto." Sasuke looked up at him, and just nodded. He wasn't ready to talk about any of this. Naruto looked to his friend who seemed tired, and his eyes widened. Sasuke." Sasuke turned to him with very little emotion on his face. "Your eyes, their Sharingan is active," Naruto said, blunt as always. Sasuke blinked at him, actually showing a bit of surprise despite the situation. Minato's voice though pulled their thought elsewhere. "Boys, I need you to go hide." Fugaku was getting back up. He threw about 10 kunai, then made a hand sign and called out, "Kunai Kage Bunshin," making them into over 200, not caring that both boys were in the line of fire. Minato put himself in front of Naruto and Sasuke, yelling for them to stay back, but Sasuke was too far to the side when a kunai got past Minato. It hit him. "Sasuke!" Naruto yelled when he saw Sasuke get hit. He didn't waste time. Naruto grabbed Sasuke's arm and pulled him over and down to a crouch behind Minato and himself. Minato knew Sasuke had been hit but couldn't look back to see how bad it was. As soon as the kunai stopped though, he felt Itachi drop down beside him. "Itachi, get Sasuke to the hospital and take Naruto with you. Stay with them till I come," Minato commanded. "Hi, Hokage-sama," Itachi responded instantly. He picked up both boys, being careful of Sasuke's wound, which he had yet to pass out from, but if the bleeding didn't stop he would soon. Naruto for his part didn't complain though he knew Madara was close by, so he was trying to sense where he was before Itachi went too far. Then he spotted him up on one of the roofs with his orange spiral mask on, watching, just far enough back that no one would notice him unless they were looking. Just then Fugaku attacked his father again, going through a string of hand signs. He called out the attack, Goryuka no Jutsu, Great Dragon Fire Technique. Itachi had gotten Sasuke and Naruto out of the way and took cover behind a wall as large dragon heads made of fire headed straight for Minato. Naruto was watching the fight from Itachi's side, as Itachi was trying to think of a way to get them out of the area safely. Naruto saw his father jump to the side of the flaming dragon heads doing hand seals for a water jutsu. Then Naruto noticed Madara tense to move, looking right at his father. Madara pulled out a kunai and sunk into the roof. "He's gonna him," Naruto thought as he pushed a large amount of chakra into his legs. He was out of Itachi's reach before the young Uchiha even knew he was moving. The 7-year-old blonde time traveler couldn't see Madara, but he knew the jutsu he was using was quick. He had to move faster, or he wasn't going to make it. Naruto instinctively pulled on Kyuubi's chakra, turning his eyes red, and pushed the demonic chakra into his small legs. His father would not die this time, Naruto thought. No promised, as he made it just in time, pushing his surprised father out of the way, just as Madara came out of the ground. He realized though he wasn't going to be able to get himself out of the way right before he felt Madara's kunai and